Welcome to part 2 of getting started with mason bees. In this video, we'll cover how to unwrap nesting tubes and harvest mason bee cocoons. We'll also show you a few things to look out for when it comes to bee health and how to take care of your cocoons until it's time for the bees to emerge in the spring. If you'd like to learn more about these solitary, gentle pollinators and how to build a home for them in your outdoor space, check out our part 1 video. If you've watched part 1, you should have a basic overview of how to provide mud, food, and shelter for mason bees. Maybe you've even had some success this year and watched them nest. But what do you do next? Mason bees are usually done laying eggs by late spring. If they've filled your tubes, you'll notice that the ends are capped with mud. In early summer, you have the option of taking these filled tubes out and putting them into a protective mesh bag in a garage or a shed. This will help keep them safe from predators. Once it reaches October or November, you have a couple of options. If you haven't already removed your filled bee tubes, you could just leave them in place and let the bees emerge naturally in the spring. The upside to this is it really doesn't require any extra work, but the downside is you'll likely have fewer bees survive and you won't be able to catch any issues that could affect future bee generations. The other option is to unwrap the nesting tubes and keep the cocoons safe over the winter. It's a little bit more work, but it's worth it, and it's fun. It gives you a glimpse into the amazing life cycle of mason bees, and it's a sting-free learning experience. Let's take a closer look at how to do this. All right, time to open a nesting tube. If you used a cardboard tube or a paper liner in a cardboard tube like this, you should be able to just unwrap from the edges. If you used a natural reed tube, you'll need to use a knife to notch the edge, twist the knife, and then the reed should pop open like this. You'll need to replace filled tubes every year, whether reed or cardboard, so don't worry about ruining them. If you've used a paper liner, you should be able to just pull the paper liner out. If it's a little tricky, you can probably get it by pushing something through the back end here. The cocoons inside the tubes do contain living bees. You don't have to worry about getting stung, but you do want to unwrap and open gently. The cocoons have some structure, but they can still get squished. I've got the whole bee tube open and laid out in order here to show you what's inside. First of all, these oval, gray, fuzzy things are the cocoons themselves, but you'll notice a whole lot of other stuff in here as well. So you'll see these, which are the mud plugs that Mama Bee has put in between each egg to protect them and as a protective wall on the exterior. And you'll notice a whole lot of these brown-black pellets in here. Any guesses as to what those might be? If you said bee poop, you are correct. This is also known as frass, and you'll find a lot of it inside the tubes here. Another thing you're likely to see are little bits of uneaten pollen cake that Mama Bee left for her baby. You might also notice that some cocoons are larger than the others, depending on their order in the tube. The larger cocoons are females, and the smaller ones over here are males. Mason bee mamas lay their female eggs in the back of the tube where they are nice and safe, and male eggs towards the front. Why? Because the males are, well, more expendable. Their only role is to mate with females, whereas the females will do the major work of laying eggs next year. Males are also the first ones to emerge in the spring, so they can locate females as soon as they emerge. So here you can see the size difference between a male cocoon and a female cocoon, which is a little bit larger. Aside from all this good stuff, there are some problems to look out for. If you see a hole in a cocoon, it's likely from a predatory insect like a wasp. There are some wasps, beetles, and other critters that use the safety of the nesting tube to raise their own young, so you might find some active larvae. Tiny yellow parasitic pollen mites and chalk brood, a fungus that results in crescent-shaped mummified larvae, are also things you want to look out for. If you find these issues, you want to remove affected cocoons and make sure that you clean the surviving ones. You can give your bees a quick bath in lukewarm or room temperature water to clean off frass along with any diseases, mites, etc. Some people add a small amount of bleach to the mixture, but we tend to just stick with water. The bee bath is also a way to sort out viable cocoons, as the ones that sink likely did not survive. Soak the cocoons and lightly agitate for 2 to 3 minutes, then gently pat and separate them to air dry for about half an hour. If you've used bleach, you'll want to rinse off the cocoons with cool water before drying. Once the cocoons are dry, you'll need to store them somewhere cool and safe for the winter. The best spot is actually your refrigerator. We're putting them into a bee humidifier, which you can purchase online, But you can also construct your own by using a plastic container with some holes and an absorptive lining with a barrier at the bottom. The cocoons need to be in a humid but not wet environment. Because refrigerators tend to dry things out, you'll need to add a teaspoon or so of water to dampen the bottom lining once a month. Once you start seeing dandelions again in the spring, usually around the beginning of April, you can put the cocoons out. Put them in a safe place near or inside your bee house, ideally where you can watch them emerge. Consider putting your cocoons out in thirds, for example, 1/3 the first week, 1/3 the next week, etc., to stagger their emergence. The cycle will then start all over again. Remember that mason bees are just one type of native pollinator that keeps our environment buzzing. You can support a wide variety of pollinators by planting native plants and avoiding the use of pesticides in your outdoor space. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, please remember to like and subscribe.